Yo, what's up guys? So today we'll be talking about algebraic expressions. So this is the first video of my Algebra 1 series. So I'm excited to get started. So for all of you guys interested, the book I'm using right now is Glencoe Algebra 1 by McGraw-Hill Education. Glencoe is spelled Glencoe. So, that's just for any of you that were interested in what book I was using. So I'll be using that for probably most of my lessons, and working with some problems out of that book and explaining them and going through them and all. So let's get started. So let's talk about an algebraic expression. So what is an algebraic expression? Well, how I like to think about it is an algebraic expression is like one side of an equation. Okay? So when you have an equation, you have something on one side and something on the other side, right? But how I like to think of an algebraic expression is it's just one side of an equation. And with the algebraic aspect, it means it uses variables. So, anything could really be a algebraic expression. We could have 4x plus 3 minus 6, okay? Something like that. It could be 5x squared plus 6x plus 11. So the book's definition is an algebraic expression consists of sums and or products of numbers and variables. So anything like this, really anything you can think of that involves numbers and variables. Then what I want to talk about is a term. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with this. A term could be a number or variable, or a product or quotient of a number and variable that are separated by a plus or minus sign. So 5x squared is its own term, 6x is its own term, 11 is its own term. So all of these here are their own term. So now, on the topic of terms like this, let's talk about factors and product. So factors of something, as you guys know, is maybe, let's give an example. What are factors of 40? Well, some factors that we can name, it could be 8 times 5, right? Or it could be 4 times 10. Or it could have multiple, you could write it as multiple factors. So you could do, I don't know, 2 times 4 times 5, anything like that. Well, when we get to algebraic expressions, we might have something like 5x squared, like I had over here. Well, what are the factors of 5x squared? Well, when it's 5x squared, it's actually 5 times x squared. So the factors would be 5 times x squared, right? But what does it mean when something's squared? Well, it means that it is itself times itself. So these would be the factors of 5x squared. And this whole thing is called a product. But because we're using variables, we can't really combine numbers and variables. So we leave it like this. Let's talk about the different parts of a power. So if we have x to the power of n, this whole thing is called a power. So there's two main parts. The big number, which is called the base, and the little number, which is called the exponent. So you multiply the base the number of times that your exponent says, basically. So if we were to have 4 to the power of 3, that's equal to 4 times 4 times 4, right? Because it's 4, the base, times itself 3 times, which is the exponent. So let's talk about order of operations. So you guys may have learned it as PEMDAS, or how I learned it, GEMMA. But they all really say the same thing. Order of operations is basically the rules that let you know which operation to perform first. And so it's basically the order that you evaluate an expression. First, you gotta do the parentheses, or grouping. So you do the inner groupings first, and you move outward, okay? And how you would usually do it is on the inside you have parentheses, outside of those you have brackets, and then outside of those you have braces. So I don't know if you would ever go further than this right here. So now let's talk about 2. Well, 2, our second priority, is exponent. So you want to evaluate the exponents second. So groupings, then exponents, then multiplication, and division. Okay, so you would normally perform these left to right. Okay, and I'll get some examples in a minute. And finally, we have addition and subtraction. And again, we perform left to right. So these are the these are the basics of order of operations, and that is how you should be. That's the basics of order operations, and that's the order that you should evaluate expressions. And this is very important later when we start working with variables more. So let's get some examples. Okay, let's do this top one. So 5 times 4 times 10 minus 8 plus 20. So what do we do first? Well, if you look at our order of operations over here, we see that groupings go first, and from inner groupings to outer groupings. And there's only one type of grouping, so let's do it right here. 10 minus 8, which is 2, right? So we can simplify this to 2. And so when you have a number right next to parentheses like that, it's actually that number times the grouping, which we know is equal to 2. So we can write this as 5 times 4 times 2 plus 20. So what comes next? Well, do we have any exponents? No. So we go to multiplication and division. So there's no division, but there is multiplication, right? So we're going to go left to right. So we're going to do multiply 5 and 4, so we get 20. And then we're going to multiply 20 times 2, which is 40. And so we're left with 40 plus 20, which is our last step, addition. So then we can simplify that to 60. Next, we have this expression here. So we have 15 minus 10 plus 3 minus 2 squared plus 6. So as you can see here, we're going to start with groupings, but there's two different types of groupings. You see there's the parentheses, and then there's the brackets, right? Well, we start with the inner parentheses first, right? So let's simplify this. 3 minus 2 is 1. So let's 15 minus 10 plus 1 squared plus 6. 1 squared, we're going to evaluate the exponent, right, because that's next, which is 1, right? 1 times 1 is 1. So we're going to rewrite this. Sorry, I'm just doing it a little backwards right now. So 15 minus 10 plus 1 plus 6. And 10 plus 1 is 11. So we have 15 minus 11 plus 6. So let's go left to right here, right? So I know I put addition first, but whichever one is the furthest left. So we have subtraction, right? So 15 minus 11 is 4. And then we're left with 4 plus 6, which is 10.